I'm so full of stuff, my brain is still exploding. Make sure you guys can hear me. Okay, volume seems a little bit low to be. You guys tell me. Give it a little teeny tweak. Okay. Oh man, you know what? I could see that my chat is janked up again. I gotta work on that. There's going to be a lot of maintenance around here, guys, now that I'm done with seminar. Since Padma's here, hi Maradim! Since Padma's here, and she may not be able to stay, I want to give credit where credit is due. The turtle with a turtleneck has a little friend known as Pocket Dutton, and I can't remember if I showed him the other day when I did my pop-up, but our dear sweet Padma made me this little Dutton puppet guy, and he is so cute, and he got so many compliments. So Padma, you are so creative and so delightful, and I love my little Pocket Dutton. He is going in a very special place of honor here at my desk, and I will wear him for the remainder of my Dutton lectures. I have one in November, and I definitely will be doing them for you guys. I just have to work out some logistics. So yes, thank you for, these are actually kind of an old pair of spectacles, but they have those lenses that go dark in the bright sunlight. So they're kind of like sunglasses. Anyway, I have this pile of stuff here on my desk to tell you guys about, and I don't even know where to start. So I thought what I would do is, I have a few little random things to tell you, but I thought I would just start at the beginning and go to the end as far as seminar goes. So this is our seminar program, and just tell you about my experiences. I saw so many cool things. I met so many cool people. I learned stuff, like seriously, head explosions. I didn't take nearly as many pictures or notes or anything as I should have. But yeah, last couple days I've been kind of reeling with, just jotting notes to myself and all that stuff. I've gotten invited to a bunch of cool quilt study things, now that people have met me in person. That's just the wonderful thing when you go to events like this. You meet people and they're like, oh, I like what you're talking about. Like, come to my thing. And that's so very cool. It didn't hurt any that there was a lot of AQSG people from the East Coast and Maryland specifically, and Pennsylvania. So easy trip for me, whereas I know some of the other attendees are from across the country. So more of a hardcore trek if they want to go to some of these events. So I feel kind of lucky that I live in a part of the world, a part of the United States where there is a lot of quilt study going on, and lots of people that are interested in sharing. So yeah, Pocket Dutton I think is more famous than Dr. Dutton. now that the AQSG world has seen him, Pocket Dutton has his own reputation. So before I forget, I just I need to flaunt it in everybody's face. Look at my fantastic ice. I missed my ice machine, my birthday ice machine that my family got me while I was away, and of course I've returned. This is actually sparkling water, which I don't know. I don't know if it really needs this kind of ice, but it sure is good with this kind of ice. So, and the crazy thing, when I got to Louisville, Druid, I'm a pretty I guess I'm a practical person. Like, why does something, I don't need a thing that's like all blinged up when the basic version will do. But I gotta say, it's like living in the lap of luxury with this ice. But when I got to Louisville, you guys know our friend Jill, she was there, but she wasn't staying at our hotel. She stayed with a girlfriend of hers that lives in Louisville. And the friend has an ice machine, and we ended up meeting up, and I was like, yeah, secret handshake later. We can't let the non-cool ice people know about this, right? It's very exclusionary. So yeah, I always have to flaunt my ice. Oh, and before I forget, it's October now. I don't, like I always say, I don't know where the time goes, but if you follow the Six Know-It-Alls, they have now switched from their September focus of Baltimore album quilts, and they moved over to October, and they're talking about the New York regional style. And so this is one for me to learn about. People are posting all kinds of different quilts, and I'm not a New Yorker. I haven't really spent much time studying New York quilts, although I'm guessing I've seen a lot of them because I'm looking through the most recent Facebook posts and I'm like, oh, that's gorgeous. Oh my God, that's fantastic. And they're all New York quilts. So I thought that would be cool for you guys to look at if you follow them. And I think it's their group, the Six Know-It-Alls Show Us Your Quilts is the group. Let me pop it in here. I have it up and it looks like, I don't see Eva here. So let me pop it in the chat. Okay, that's a terrible link, but you guys get the point. But anyway, like such a perfect opportunity to learn from these folks. Thanks, Druid. That is a better, yeah, that's a better link. So I will dispel the rumors right off the bat. If you didn't see the other day, I can't remember what I said, but I met all of my Quilting World heroes. So, Mary Kay, of course, was here the other day, and if you missed that stream, hi, Akamo! Oh, you're not late. You didn't miss anything. I'm glad you made it. So you guys saw Mary Kay the other day, and if you missed that, go back and watch it. It was really crazy in my hotel room. We were lucky enough, like all of the rooms in this one tower of the hotel have this little suite in the front. So, with a little couch and a chair and stuff. So it was really cool. Like I could invite people in and they didn't have to sit on my bed. And it was a short stream, but she stopped by and I was so excited. She and Molly had this really great conversation. And I listened to a part of it back today because I was like, it was probably so noisy in there. Everybody was talking behind me, but it turned out it wasn't too bad. Thank goodness for the sound on my phone. The mic on my phone was really good. I have still not figured out this issue with when I take my laptop away from its fancy mic, it wants to just act like a jerk. I had all the settings right this time. If you guys remember when I streamed from my mom's house a few weeks ago, it did the same thing. So I got to figure this out. And I think I'm going to have to dig out an old travel mic and see if that works. But yes, I was, again, so excited. I think Padma came in at the end. And I think the only two people we were missing was Amy Pabst and our dear friend Kathy. I feel bad kind of outing people's names, but Word Bird Nerd. Yeah, Joy, that's another thing I'm going to try too. I have a pair of Samsung earbuds that actually like pair really well with my Surface Pro. So I'll try a few things. Anyway, but they were both, so Amy and Kathy were both off with, other obligations. So they didn't make it, but just this core group of quilt nerds, and then Mary Kay, like it was so exciting. It was so fun. And they always say like, you don't want to meet your heroes. I have to say, in the quilt world, it is absolutely wonderful to meet your heroes. I had a chance to meet Laurel Horton. She is sort of a big name. If you're not familiar with her, go look her up. She lives in South Carolina. She's done a lot of sort of research and traveling around as far as where she lives, but kind of that core area of the South. And she, like I said, she's currently in South Carolina. She wrote this really seminal piece about a family in their quilts in South Carolina. So she was the keynote speaker. So I was so excited to meet her. Barbara Brackman needs no explanation. If you guys don't know who Barbara Brackman is, Google her fast because you should know who she is in terms of quilts and quilt history. She is, I think, especially well known because, what I've discovered, growing up with my mom being a quilter and, my mom displayed her quilts. She worked with quilt guilds. She designed some patterns. And then she kind of had to get away from it for a while because she and my dad got divorced. She took a job with the government. It was really hard to kind of maintain her creative and quilt related job and pursuits. But I was really I feel like I was really well connected and I kind of understand the quilt world as far as making quilts. But the quilt history world, like to many of you guys, is still fairly new to me. I mean, I've really only been like hardcore researching and literally paying attention to the history stuff and not dismissing it for probably just a few years, really. And I kind of came to it in a weird way because, again, quilts. I made my first quilt when I was like 16. Um, but the quilt history piece of it kind of more came out of my study of historical costuming. And when I realized like historical costuming and textiles and quilts like are so overlapped, I was like, this is meant to be. I like quilts and quilting. I like history. But the point I'm trying to make here is Barbara Brackman has a foot in both worlds. So some of the names that you'll hear, they're very well-known quilt historians, but they don't necessarily make quilts. Or if they do, it's really just their hobby. They're not out there like teaching quilting classes or releasing writing books about making particular quilts. Barbara has done that. So that's why she's kind of like the pinnacle of, quilting industry, making quilts / studying quilts and quilt history. So she is a national treasure. Some of the other folks, I mean, again, just like people, I've heard their names, I've read their books, I've seen papers they've written, and they were there, and they were so nice and welcoming, and filling in little bits and pieces of my research, telling me like, oh, this is so fascinating that you've, looked at this thing, but did you want to know the rest? Because I know the rest. And I'm like, again, head exploding. And with very few exceptions, and nothing directed at me, there are people that kind of get a little like, well, you don't know the whole story. Let me fill that in for you. But for the most part, everybody was so kind to me, knowing I'm a newer researcher and like being willing to say, here's the rest of that story. Here's a clue to help you as you finish your research in that direction. So it was so amazing to me, just the kindness and willing to collaborate. I often see that at conferences and conventions, and some of them it happens. Like, people are genuinely there and genuinely putting in the effort and like really want to meet you and collaborate. And I've been to other conferences and conventions where people they hand out their business cards and it's a little bit of lip service. Like, they really don't want to hear from you after the conference. But I would say this is absolutely not the case with AQSG Seminar. It was really arms open, and those of us who are newer were, I feel like welcomed, and made to feel like part of the group, and just again, so many opportunities and chances to learn things and talk to people further, and all that stuff. So that said, I think I've made the point that it was overwhelmingly exciting. But I want to show you, to maybe tantalize you a little bit with some of the cool things I brought home. Some of it, and let me show you this real quick again before Padma leaves. I just have to show, I don't know if you want people to see your handle, Padma, but this is the little card that Padma handed out. And I know this little, oh gosh, my fingernails are this is a New Home Sewing Machine card. So it's like one of those little collector cards. And so I think that she purchased this. If Padma, if you're still here, I think she purchased like the original. And then she put it on a business card. And then on the back of it, she's got like thread and color number. So like if you're sewing, if you're embroidering, you can then wrap your extra thread around the card instead of, trying to make it back into a skein or trying to wrap it around, your skein of embroidery floss. So I thought this was so cool. Like, it's really neat to have like a little paper thing that, ordinarily you might take somebody's business card. Ah, yes, it was an antique postcard. Yes. That's right. A lot of times you get business cards and you might add the person maybe to your phone contact list, or you email them so you've got that, and then you just kind of add the business cards. Like, so I really love a business card that has a practical purpose to it. So plus, Padma, this is yours, so I would never get rid of this. And yes, I accumulated a lot more. So people that I have to reach out to and say hello and thank them and all that stuff. Um, okay, before I go through sort of the schedule to tell you all of the highlights, I have my copy of Uncoverings. This is the fantastic thing about going to seminar is you get your uncoverings first. um, and so I flipped through it. I know what the topics are. I haven't had a chance to really like start reading in depth, but if you are a member, if I remember correctly, last year I want to say they shipped them maybe within the month after seminar. You know, I know they're kind of work on a pretty small team there, and so with the QSG, so I think they bring all the books and they get them all set to ship, and there's probably a decent amount of membership that can't make it to seminar, so it takes them a little bit to ship those out, but you'll get yours soon if you're a member. So, and there's some like kind of cool things in here. Actually, one thing in here, let me see if I can find it real fast. Oh, so the cut and sew dolls that they would print on flour sacks. I did not get to go to the ladies' paper presentation. I honestly don't even know what her name is now. I'm drawing an absolute complete blank. Bad Stephanie. So many people, okay, so this is Kathleen Cray, and her paper was called Playthings by the Yard, Cut and Sew Doll and Toy Panels of the Late 19th and Early 20th Century. So you'll often see these kind of early cut and sew toys. They kind of get lumped in with feed sacks a lot of times, and it's the idea of making packaging useful, or some aspect of a disposable thing useful, which I love. And if you don't know what a cut and sew is, it's essentially just, like a panel of fabric, a piece of fabric that you can, it's already printed with a doll or a toy image, and you just basically cut it out, sew it together, stuff it, and, it's, Druid, making dolls is like, there's so many different aspects of making dolls, like the fact that you can make a doll out of anything, or what dolls represent, what dolls are used for. I mean, it's just, yeah, there's so much you could go down that, that making aspect of dolls. Yeah, that's such a huge category, and I love it. But anyway, so these cut and sew dolls started, like I said in the title of Kathleen's paper, late 20th century. And I'm sorry, late 19th century. And, they were printing them on flour sacks, and, it was an opportunity for, you had to buy flour to feed your family. And in a lot of cases, like, my grandmother her family, they were feeding a whole bunch of farm workers too. So her mom had things like that because, by virtue of what they did. And so unfortunately those, if she ever had a flour sack doll, it's lost to time. But I did find a vendor who had one. She actually had several of the made dolls, but I invested in one that's not already made, and I'll show it to you in a minute. It's sort of the pinnacle of my collection. It wasn't actually as expensive as I expected it to be, but it wasn't thrift store prices either. So, but I'll show you that in a minute. I know I'm all over the place because seriously, my brain. Okay, so the seminar was in Louisville. I have never been to Kentucky before. It was an absolutely delightful place. If you're ever looking for a medium-sized city, I guess, to go visit in the sort of southern mid section of the country, I highly recommend Louisville. Lexington is also supposed to be great. I've never been there. I kind of drove past it. But, kudos to Kentucky for having a cute city. I obviously didn't get around to all parts of the city. There just wasn't enough time. But just driving through, and we did a field trip thing, and so got to see some things there. It's just, there's lots of history there, as you would imagine. They have like a really interesting arts community there. Like all the things you would enjoy in a smaller city, you know, and it's not a booming metropolis like New York City. Like traffic is not terrible. So I really liked Louisville, and hope to maybe get back there sometime to check it out. Anyway, so, and two of the things about Louisville, or Kentucky in general, there was a very Kentucky theme. And when I get to some of the other events, I'll tell you more stuff. But at our dinners, we had these cute little recipe cards that they shared. I don't know if beer cheese is something special to Kentucky. I've had beer cheese lots of different places. So, but anyway, you have a recipe card for beer cheese. That was kind of cute. And then the hot brown. If you've never heard of a hot brown, I did have two different versions of a hot brown. One was a little, like a little hors d'oeuvre, like a little finger hors d'oeuvre. It was just like on a little toast. And then I had a hot brown casserole. But essentially what a hot brown is, it's supposed to be like an open-faced sandwich where they put the bread out and then they pile it up with turkey, like roast turkey. Seems like it's perfect for leftover Thanksgiving, leftover Christmas, whatever you might eat a turkey for. And then they put this cheese sauce on it. You can't go wrong with cheese. And somewhere in there, there's supposed to be some chopped tomato, I believe. Either sliced or chopped tomato in there. And then I think they broil some more cheese on top. And then there's bacon also. So you kind of see all of this in this picture. Definitely the bacon. I can't really see the tomatoes. I'm thinking in here, the tomato is probably like this right over here. I think it's probably under the cheese sauce with the turkey. Anyway, I was told by a Kentucky native that hot browns kind of depend on who makes them, whether they're good or not. I had no issues with the two I tried. They were just fine. I don't usually like leftover turkey or just really turkey in general, unless it's carved right off the bird. It's just got that poultry taste that I don't love. But I have to say the hot browns I had were good. I think it would be worth a try at, you know, a decent restaurant. Apparently also the hot brown name has nothing to do with the fact that there's no brown, really. You know, it's not a brown gravy. Everyone was saying, well, why is it a hot brown when the gravy's not brown? Apparently it was invented, or the first time it was served was at a hotel called the Brown Hotel or the Browns Hotel. So there's a little bit of Louisville history for you. So, and you know, that's the other thing. If you've never been to a convention or a conference, the swag and the little things you pick up are sometimes like the fun part. Obviously, the reason you go to a convention or a conference is to meet people, to learn things, you know, to take part in whatever they have created for the event. But the swaggy stuff is sometimes the things that help you remember, and are just, you know, they're just kind of a nice little part of the event. So anyway, these are going to go in my little stash of exciting things that I've picked up along the way. Okay, so let's talk about, speaking of Berea College. Oh, yes. Thank you for sharing that, Druid. You know, and I know you are a little ways away from Louisville, right? But you're not too terribly far. So I'm going to assume you know a little bit about Kentucky just by virtue of the fact you're in a state that's not too far away. So seminar started last Wednesday, and that was a travel day for me. You know, just in terms of, I mean, you guys know travel can be expensive, and I sort of made a decision that I wasn't going to take on the expense of another day at the hotel, because we stayed at the conventions or the conference center hotel. And then also I knew that, you know, the more events you pack on to like one major event, it gets really exhausting. And so I decided like this, I can skip this first thing. So on Wednesday they had these field trip, or a field trip. That one was to the Kentucky Museum at Western Kentucky University, which is several hours west of Louisville. And from what I understand, you know, it was a great quilt display they had there at the college, or at the university, but it was rough because it rained that day. And, you know, one wrong turn by the bus driver kind of set the schedule back. And like, you know, it was just all the usual, you know, stuff happens kind of situation. So I think that was probably best that the several of us that had considered it had, you know, decided not to do it. But Thursday, things start at the crack of dawn, which, you guys know, I'm not a morning person. But at 8 a.m., my mom and I forgot to mention, my mom was with me if you didn't see her on my quick stream the other day. She is as much like obsessed and goo goo gaga over quilt history too. So she came with. And so we went up to the registration table. And of course, exciting. I got to meet some of the AQSG people I've corresponded with, like the on the staff and the board. So I was excited to see them. And I turn around and think about, well, like, where are we going to go? Because we still have a little bit of time before our tour leaves, because Thursday is a field trip day. And who do I run into but Ms. Mary Kay Waldvogel? And it was funny because we'd exchanged phone numbers and thinking, like, I know it's going to be a big conference center. I know that there's a lot of people there. And the chances of us, like, crossing paths could very well have been slim. There are people I know that were there, and I never crossed paths with them. We did not do any of the same events. We did not end up in the same place at the same time. We just simply did not cross paths. So I thought it was really cool. Literally, Mary Kay and I, like, saw each other, like, right off the bat. So that was fun. Hi, Word and Bird Nerd. We're just talking about seminar. So whatever and I think Padma was not going to be able to stay long because it's her granddaughter's first birthday. But if you have anything you want to chime in about, let me know. Because I know you have lots of hot gossip and brain explosions too. But anyway, so exciting that I run into Mary Kay, and lo and behold, she's on the field trip that my mom and I are taking. Also, Debbie Cooney, who is also one of the 6 know-it-alls, she was on our field trip. Lori Lee Triplett, another name, was on our field trip. So it's wild that, I'm like going to a museum with, I don't know, it was maybe 30 of us, 25 or 30 people. And like half of them are people whose books I own, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I've either watched this person in awe for a really long time because they are so knowledgeable, or I have read their books cover to cover because they're, they have great collections, wonderful, academic research, all that stuff. So Thursday, I'm a little gobsmacked from start to finish. But we went to so there were 3 trips that day, and Padma and Word and Bird Nerd went on a different field trip than I did. They got to see the coffin quilt. And if you guys aren't familiar with this one, I will let them talk about it, like either in the Quilt Nerd Discord or whatever, because I haven't seen it. I've only seen pictures of it. But it's essentially this quilt where the maker, yes, the graveyard quilt. Did I call the coffin quilt? The graveyard quilt. The maker, like, kind of prepared the little coffins for the family, and the center of the quilt, I think, was the little graveyard. And as the people passed away, she would move them, into their, like, proper space in the graveyard. It's an interesting thing. On one hand, it's an amazing way to manage the genealogy of this family, right? But it's just a weird thing, and I think, like, these days, we see stuff like that and we kind of, historically get it. But I guess, like, that 19th century had a different sort of opinion about death, and, their odd practices or obsessions just kind of ring weird to us today, but I think we get it. So I think for the folks that went on that field trip was, like, really exciting to see that quilt. And I think Padma told me it was her favorite thing. So Kathy, I think it was up there for you too, but I suspect that your live auction win might be your pinnacle. I'm not sure. I can't speak for you, but I know that you were pretty excited. I'll get there to talk about that in a little bit. So, yeah. Oh, that's right. You guys got about a half an hour to study it. And I almost feel like, was that even enough time, right? So my field trip was to 2 different places. The first stop was the Filson Historical Society, which is not too far away. They're, I I don't really know the layout of Louisville very well, but they seem to be like in a downtown historical-ish area. It didn't take us too long to get there from the hotel. And it was really awesome. They are, I mean, I'll let you guys read about it. Filson Historical Society. They're on Instagram as Filson Historical. And they are just a fun bunch of people. They're, not to trash talk older museum people, but I think sometimes when you get some more, like some younger, fresher ideas into the administration of a museum or some sort of association or group like this, you sometimes get some new ideas, and you also get like some of the technology knowledge and sort of newer methods of looking at things. So I feel like the Filson's doing a really good job of that. They've been around. I say obviously. You guys will obviously figure this out if you go look them up. They've been around for a long time. They are in this old house, I guess it was the mansion that belonged to these people. And I'm drawing a complete blank on all of the historical details just because I was, my brain exploded over the quilt. But, it has this really interesting history, and the building is really interesting. And so our little our activity at the Filson was they took our group and we kind of split ourselves into two, and they had, out of their collection of 60 quilts, they had pulled 12 that they thought would be interesting to us. And also, knowing there were going to be like experts on this field trip, I think they were also quilts that they might have had some question about. Like, was the date that was given to them when the quilt was donated, is that date correct? And they talked us through, like, this is the information we have. Like, we know it can't possibly be made after, XYZ date because the woman died in this date, or she was born on this date. So they had this kind of information, and they wanted to know what some of the quilt experts thought. So that was like, I just stood back and listened. I was like, but they split the quilts in half. And so 6 quilts were on one table, 6 quilts on the other table. They did the quilt turning, and then we switched places. Our group switched places. So then it was funny. It was like a quilt turning in reverse. So when you do a quilt turning, basically they would stack all the quilts up on a table flat, and you study it. You kind of push your arms behind your back. You're not supposed to touch them. And they have the helpers there that can turn the quilts to the back, and you can look at the back of it. And then when they're ready to rebuild the next one, they kind of roll it up or gently fold it up and set it aside, and then you have the next one. So that's like the way a quilt turning works. So when we switched places, then they were putting the quilts back on the table and spreading them out. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, I saw a bunch of stuff. Like, I feel like, I've got all of the Dating Fabrics book. And I have Barbara Brackman's Clues in the Calico, which is another good one, which was, I believe, a gift from someone in this room. But I'm so bad still at dating fabrics. Like, it's something I just need to get better about. So I was really soaking it up, where they're talking about, oh, this one, Prussian blue, and, all of these different things were, Kenny, hi. So anyway, I'm soaking up all of this stuff, like, and I was also excited because I saw things that like, oh, I know the answer to that, just because of what I have studied so far. So that's exciting. You're soaking on all the info, and then you see something where you're like, oh, I know this because of what I've done before. So that's like nerd excitement, right? So from there, we went on from the Filson Historical Society. We went on to Locust Grove, which is famous because it was owned by relatives of, oh gosh, Lewis and Clark, and I think it's Lewis. That's terrible. You see how I really ingested the historical information, right? When it doesn't pertain to quilts, it's a little bit harder to remember. But Locust Grove was also equally a beautiful place. They had fewer quilts. They had 4 quilts out for us to look at, and then they had a bunch of samplers, like cross-stitch samplers, which, I think are interesting. There's others in our group that were much more interested in those. Um, but yeah, that was fun. That was just a fun kind of afternoon walk around. We ate our lunch there. We had a box lunches, and it was really pretty there. So I think the Filson was the star of the field trip for me, but Locust Grove was also really fun. So that was the early part of our day. That was only part of the day, you guys. That was like we had other stuff to go to. What was also going on at the same time back at the conference center were the beginning of the study centers. And my Dutton lecture was a study center. Mine happened on Friday, but they did start them on Thursday. So that would have been an option if we decided not to do the field trip, then we could have stayed and gone to one of the study centers. So yeah, like just schedule's jam packed. And this, again, this is how conferences go. That you can't do everything just because there's so much packed in, and a lot of times overlapping. You have to make decisions about what you're going to go see. So that evening, so we get back, we have like an hour, and then it's time to go to the Fraser History Museum, which was about a half a mile, maybe a little less than a half a mile walk. It was a few blocks away from the hotel. And I'm not 100% sure what all of their collection is focused on. I think it's really just sort of local history. But they do have their upstairs, they had this really cool display. I don't know how else to describe it. It was this weird little hallway with this display of all of these different types of Kentucky bourbons and whiskey. And there was a secret panel that it opened up into this speakeasy. So they have this speakeasy room up there. I think that you can rent all of this space for events. And so that's what they had done. They'd rented this top floor for us. They had a bluegrass band there. Really yummy little hors d'oeuvres and things. It was where I had my little hot brown appetizer. And it was just a really neat place. Yes. Kathy, I don't know if you saw the way that door, it was one of the shelves that swung open. Lisa found this. And I don't know, I think that it probably wasn't supposed to be open to us. Oh, Padma, I kind of took a picture, but if you have a better one, yes, please send it to me. I would love that. Because I feel like I was trying to take pictures as I was walking out. I'm really bad at remembering to do that. But you might have something that shows it better. But yeah, it was just such a neat place, and there was another event going on downstairs. Yeah, I think that it was a quiet space. Lisa actually found it first. She said she kind of always scopes out the quiet places. So my guess is they had opened it and someone else had gone in there. And, I don't think it was a big deal. We had the upper space. So downstairs there was another event going on. So we could kind of go to the museum gift shop, but we had to kind of go around. There was a lot going on there. So once we were sort of done with the mixing and the hors d'oeuvring and the cash barring, we just went back to the hotel. So, and my gosh, it was a lot. I was so ready to just lie down at that point and sleep. The vendor sale, I'm trying to think, did I go to that night? I'm literally losing the timeline here a little bit because there was so much. Might have been the next day that I went off to the vendor sale. So on Friday, thank you, Padma. I have my phone on, or you emailed, okay. I have my phone on airplane mode so it doesn't disturb us. But if it's email, that doesn't matter either way. So there was another field trip on Friday, and I did not do that one because, like I said, I do know myself, and I know I can't do that kind of stuff back to back. It's just too much. So I was there, and the other thing is Friday, my study center was in the afternoon, so it would not have made a lot of sense or would not have been a good decision for me to be okay, so from 8 to noon, I'm going to go do this thing, and then I'm going to come back. I was way too nervous. So I think if I remember correctly, Jill went on the, our friend Jill went on the Friday um, field trip, and that was to the Speed Art Museum. I didn't hear a whole lot about it, so I'm not sure what they did there. But, again, art museum there in Louisville, they have a really strong, art and historical museum community. They had all kinds of stuff there. So yeah. Now, Friday afternoon, as you may know, I was on stage. Not actually. I was in the front of a conference room doing my Dutton presentation. Now, I will share with you guys, it did not start well. I had gone down, and pretty close to the room I was going to do my presentation in, they had the silent auction. And the silent auction was pretty cool. They, members bring things to donate, and then they auction them off. For the operating budget of AQSG. They also have something called the endowment table, where it was similar. They donate things, and for that you you make an offer, and the endowment folks may or may not accept your offer. I got 2 things at the endowment table. My offers were accepted. I'll show you one of them, but I don't want to show you the second one because it's going to be a surprise. I'm going to do something with it. So, but I'll tell you about that in a little bit. So anyway, I'm kind of roaming around the endowment table, the studies, the silent auction area. I was wearing my turnip dress. That was for you guys and the quilt nerds. If you don't know about the turnip joke, the inside joke about the turnip of hope, that's okay. But it was a wink to you guys that do know the inside joke. So, I say I'm feeling good. I got my cute dress on, and I'm wandering around, and I'm like, you know what? It's 1:30. I had dropped my stuff off in the room. I should probably go and just set up, and then, I'll be like totally cool, like totally kick back, just wait for people to come. So I'm setting my stuff up, and I'm like, where is this one little cord I needed? It's a little dongle. It was, for those of you that are technological, it was my HDMI. My HDMI dongle, because my laptop only has USB-C ports. So I have to have this little connector. And it's not a big deal. I use a different one for my setup here on my desk. But I knew the HDMI one would be important. And we were told, study center presenters, you don't necessarily get a whole lot of AV help. You kind of need to be ready to plug and play, which was an expectation I'm totally fine with. And it should be that way because, resources for AV needed to go somewhere else. So I start to panic a little bit and I'm like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So of course, Mary luckily is the first person I find, and she's like, oh, okay, all right, let's think about this. Okay. So I can get in an Uber and I can go to Best Buy, or we could find the hotel AV people, or, if you have a thumb drive, you could put your presentation on that and we could put it on somebody else's computer. So she's throwing out all these troubleshooting things. So it was determined there was not a Best Buy close enough, and it was a half an hour till go time. So I run as fast as I ever have run in fancy shoes and went up to my room and got a thumb drive. So, worst case, I could transfer it to somebody else. Mary went in search of the AV guy, and he showed up right away. Thank goodness, and we got it all taken care of. He lent me a little thing, and it was all good. And we started on time, and then I had no problems. But, with something like that, it's like, first of all, for those of you that don't know, my profession, the one that pays my mortgage, has always paid my mortgage, is in instructional design. My master's work was in instructional design and development, which is really pretty much a fancy way of saying, I have degree worthy education in things like Zoom and online, online training and any kind of technology and training. That's sort of what my focus was. And so I felt like an absolute just ding dong to have shown up there without this one critical piece of technology, because usually I'm that person. I've worked a lot of conventions and conferences, and I'm usually the person that they're saying, like, hey, Stephanie, so and so forgot this thing. Like, what do we do? And I'm like, don't worry, I have one. Let me come in and fix it, and it's all going to be good. So for me to be the person that like is like melting down and not having the things they needed was super, super stressful. Yes, Wordbird nerd. So I was, of course I'm nervous. Like, it totally had nerves, but honestly, and I did no excuses. Like, the show must go on, and I didn't want to tell anybody who didn't already know. Yeah, I was pretty much like, my voice was very strained, and I was like sweating profusely at the beginning, and it really had nothing to do with presenting to this crowd. It was really about the technology issue. And I wish more people had known from that perspective, because I kind of want to make the point. I was not nervous about my content. The only nerves I had about my content was not being able to finish in time. But it is what it is. So anyway, I think that my presentation went pretty good. What the fear I had stressed to you guys was that I would not end on time. Like, I'd get to a point where, my room monitor, who was Mary, yay! Mary was my room monitor. I would get to that point where, they're saying like 5 minutes left, and I've still got like 30 slides to go. I was so worried about that. I did finish in the nick of time. I did go over. I didn't have the length of time that I was supposed to have for questions, but it seemed to work out okay. I didn't like go over time. And people came up to me afterwards and with questions and comments. So over the next 2 days. So I think it went fine. It was good. My immediate reaction to it was, people asking me, and I was like, okay, look, if I'd been sitting in the audience with everyone, I would have given myself a C+. Like, good effort, cake. But here are the 10 things you need to do better. But for the most part, people were all very kind. I got really great feedback. And I think that I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys, I know this, but you're harder on yourself. You can, like, in your quilts, if you make quilts, you can look at them and you can see all the places where your points don't match, or, there was a little tiny, like, tuck, or, your stitching was a little crazy. But other people can't see that. They don't know. So it's a lesson that I learned over and over and over again. So I think there was 50. If there were more or less, it was because they purchased last minute, which I don't think happened. I think it was more likely that maybe 1 or 2 people were no shows for whatever reason. They were sick or couldn't come or whatever. But yeah, it was like 50 people. Which is actually, in the whole scheme of things, when you're in front of people, I think 50 for a lecture is a really manageable bunch of people, because, assuming a decent number of them might have questions, it's you could kind of manage questions from that amount of people in about 10 or 15 minutes. I did not give them that luxury, but I think it's a good group. 25 is a nice group as well. When you get up into 75 or 100, that's where, questions and sometimes people like being noisy, or, it gets to be, more difficult. You just pretty much lecture to them, and it's not very interactive. So I think 50 to 25 is like really nice for a little teeny bit of interactivity. You can ask them to raise their hand, and if somebody asks a question in the middle of it, it's not a big deal. It's not really that disruptive. So anyway, I thought it was a nice amount for me. And yeah, it was, and they were a knowledgeable bunch. There was, a handful that were like, I learned so much. But there were a lot of other people that said, I already knew a lot about Dutton. You filled in a lot of blanks for me. I got a lot of feedback about, well, when are you publishing? So I think the expectation is that I will put together some type of paper based on my research. And that's the thing. I really have to sit down and like work all this out, because the presentation as it is not it's not paper worthy. It's not like I could take my presentation and go like, okay, jam this thing into a paper, do all my citations. Like, that wouldn't be a good paper. I have to find the thing within the big thing, to decide what I'm going to focus on and write about. So you guys will know as I do it. So anyway, after that, of course, then it's, kind of like the big, like, whew, oh, it's over. I can relax now. And so that night was the opening banquet. So Thursday night we had just the little reception, the little mixer. Friday is like the big deal. And so Nancy Bavor, of course, you guys that are over on Quilt Nerd probably heard Mary talk about her. She's the president of AQSG. She's an incredible lady. She came into a study center I was in, but I never really got much of a chance to talk to her. But anyway, very exciting to at least be in her presence, and she was there to listen. She wanted to know, what, coming out of COVID, and we're kind of on the second seminar after, like post-COVID, what, as people are coming back, like, what do they want to see? What kind of changes might be good? What, she's definitely one of those really forward-thinking people, asking the questions and not just saying like, well, we're back and it's going to be the way it's always been. She recognizes that with new members and with oddball things like COVID changing the way we did things, there needs to be that evolution and that move forward. So I think it's great. She's a really good, leader for the organization, I think. And then, of course, we had the keynote address called Why Quilts with Laurel Horton. And like I said, Laurel is an incredible historian. She's got such a fascinating story. She is the nicest lady ever. So definitely look her up. Her name is spelled as you would expect, Laurel Horton, Horton. And her description, her presentation, Why Quilts, was really about her own personal story, like how she went from, this young person who, wasn't really sure where she was going in her life. And, she got some education. Was it the right thing? All of those kind of things that happened to her. And on top of that, she has a congenital hearing problem. So, oh, yes, I have to tell about that. Okay, so I'll get there in a second. Thank you, Kathy. I know I was forgetting important stuff. But so Laurel has had, this congenital hard of hearing, hearing loss. So she kind of dealt with that like all her life. That's a challenge. And then she also was diagnosed with adult ADD at 50. So she talked about, how these things have affected her as a person, kind of making her way through life. And then how that overlays with the serendipity of meeting people who helped her find her path. And so it was such an inspiring story. Yeah, you comment. Let me put it in there. Oops. There you go. And like I said, she's in South Carolina. If you Google Laurel Horton quilts, you'll find her in her books. So anyway, she was just an amazing speaker. And I mean, again, mind-blowing, super stuff. And then that night they did a show and tell, which I did not come back for because I wanted to go sort of debrief, rest a little bit because I was, so much going on, change my clothes out of the turnip dress. And then late that night we went to, oh yes, I forgot about that too, Word Nerd. So Laurel's family was there. There was probably, I was sitting at an odd angle, but I want to say it was like 6 or 8 people were there to support her. And I mean, we're talking like, I know her sister was there. Maybe it was a grandson or a nephew. Yeah, and they had them all kind of in this section, and they were just, she was kind of like sheepish about it, but they were all like, just clapping and hooting and hollering for her. And that's just so like, it's so exciting to see that, that they were so proud of her. And I mean, of course we adore her. I mean, like, what a culmination. And I mean, she's still going strong. It's not like she's like retiring, but like, what a great show of just appreciation for her and her contributions, and the fact that her family got to be there too and see it. I mean, I just think I don't know. I've never really been awarded with anything like so mind blowing, but um, as to do well, I mean, I have done a keynote, but it was for a very tiny organization. So to be able to stand up in front of, the organization that you've given so much to, and people that just really, really respect your work, and then have your family there too. I mean, like, just so, so like really a tearjerker, I got to be honest. Let me back up. And I, again, totally forgot. So we left the Fraser Museum, the little, hors d'oeuvres and cash bar mixer. And it was kind of like our one chance to do like the quilt nerd dinner, because again, so much packed in there. So Mary said, there's this great pub. It's not too far away. How about we all go there? And so it ended up being, so me, Mary, Jill, Padma, Word and Bird Nerd, one of the women from the Filson, because they had been invited, and so one of the younger girls from the Filson, and yes, Meg Cox. Meg Cox was our fun addition, and and Jill's friend, who she was staying with, who is a quilter, but not a current EQSG member, so she was kind of scoping it out, like from what we were saying. I think I mentioned Lisa and Molly. I think we were all there except for Amy. Amy didn't make it. I think I'm not sure what she had going on that night. But did I miss anybody? Padma, Word and Bird Nerd? If I did, I'm sorry. It just, again, brain explosion. But yes, Meg Cox. Oh my goodness. She was there. And another person that I have followed for a really long time. She and Mary are good friends. Yeah. Oh, okay. Mary's got, Padma's gone on to the birthday party. So, yeah, it just was a really great evening, just hanging out with, again, the nerds and Meg Cox. I mean, come on. She's so fascinating. And if you're not on her mailing list, she puts out I think it's like monthly. She puts out a newsletter. It's always packed with information. It's, she doesn't spam you. She literally, you'll get an email from her when she does the newsletter, and that's it. Oh, Meg offered Mary a place to live. Oh, yeah, I miss some of these things. So that's a good piece of hot goss. Yeah, you guys, that Mary's thinking about, doing some advanced study and maybe getting her PhD. So yeah, that's exciting that, and again, I go back to the fact, like, this is the great thing about these communities. So we've got this AQSG community with people like Meg. Oh, okay. Word and Bird Nerd, yes. So, yes, so it was me, Molly, Jill's friend. Like, we walked, and then Mary, Kathy, Padma, Meg were very tired from their day and took an Uber. And amazingly, we ended up there at the exact same time. It was so funny. So it must have been in the car, right? But yeah, like Meg's stories are so interesting. And I'm trying to think, if you want to follow her, obviously, but Google her. I can't remember. I think she's got it might be off of her. It might be off of her, like her Facebook or Instagram, where you can link to her newsletter sign up. It's been a really long time, so I can't remember. If anybody else, if you have a chance to Google that and pop it in. She has a blog. Yeah, I think so. You're right. So anyway, just definitely follow her. Find her. Meg Cox Quilts. You'll find her. She is one of those people that, like, and I'm not trying to throw shade. Thank you, Kathy. It was easy as megcox.com. Not trying to throw shade, but you'll see people at conferences who are dressed like to the nines, all the way down to people that are kind of like, t-shirt and jeans kind of situation. not throwing shade because honestly, I was a t-shirt and jeans situation for most of the days. Meg, on the other hand, looks like she just stepped out from like lunch at the Met. She's always got these beautiful clothing, you know, these beautiful dresses. The one night she was wearing this, and Kathy, you might remember, you're gonna have to put it in there. I think is it Zuri? It's these dresses that are made in Kenya, I think. They're made in Africa, but I'm pretty sure it's Kenya. And they're the African wax print, and it's a workshop of women that make these beautiful dresses, and I think they make shirts too. And you know, they're paid like a fair wage for their work. And I think she said she has like two of them, and she has a top. So she was just wearing this stunning dress the night we went out with her, and like it didn't stop. She had a stunning dress every day. And then because of the Kentucky Derby theme that was going on, she had this big, beautiful hat. So yes, Meg is just an amazing person. She's so classy and so interesting. And she's traveled all over the place. So definitely check her out. And she's a former journalist. So that's why she's kind of got this, you know, she's done a lot of journalistic things in her life. And, you know, now she's in our world, and again, a treasure trove. So please follow her if you don't already. And so yeah, the dinner that night was just perfectly nice. Yes, Wall Street Journal. Yeah, like she's and she is now, I don't think I'm probably like throwing gossip around to say she's like 70 now. So she's had like this really amazing illustrious career. She goes to Burning Man. Like she didn't go this past one that just happened, but she was there I think last year. She's so interesting. She travels all over the place. So I kind of live, you know, vicariously through the stuff that she reports on. So that was a really fun dinner. So back to Friday after the big opening ceremony and dinner and keynote and all that. We of course have to look at the vendors. I mean, come on. Oh, Word and Burden. I can't wait to hear her. I think Meg is so generous too. She's one of those people that's like, you know, she's willing to give a helping hand. So I will say one thing. The vendor area was a little too rich for my blood for the most part. We're talking like Julie Silber. If you don't know who Julie Silber is, check out the 6 Know-It-Alls. She's one of them. And just Julie Silber in general. She is a very well-known quilt dealer and collector. She's like the West Coast name in quilt dealing and collecting. So she's a big deal. Stella Rubin was also there. Stella Rubin is an East Coast, I guess the East Coast version of Julie Silber. Thank you, Word Nerd. She used to be in Baltimore, but I think she's kind of out. I think she's on the Eastern Shore now, if I remember correctly. But again, like these are museum quality quilts these women collect and resell. They are stuff that is really, really old and has been meticulously preserved by their owners. Either the family that like inherited the quilt has taken just impeccable care of it. Yes, these ladies are like yeah, they don't mess around. They are probably make a lot of money, you know, based on what they do. And Stella Rubin also, not just quilts and textiles, if I remember correctly, she was also involved in like just the antiques market in Baltimore. Like there's a couple of these auction houses in Baltimore that, you know, like really high level, like the Chippendale stuff and the I don't know, you know. I'm not an antiques person that much, so but you know, like the really old stuff that people pay a lot of money for, including museums. So anyway, that's the kind of stuff you kind of saw over there in the vendor area. I don't have $8,000 for a quilt that may have covered George Washington on his trip to wherever. So it was a little bit more of like just look around and be amazed for me. But there was one vendor in the vendor area, and let me I'm going to put this in the chat. She, as far as I know, there is no website. She may or may not be on Facebook, although I think she is. It's Quilting Memories. and her name is Cindy Claycamp. And if you like the 1930s, early 20th century, feed sacks, all that kind of stuff, she's your lady. She does all the shows. If I understand correctly, she's going to be at Paducah next year, early next year. I think it's in May, April, May. She's also going to be at the Lancaster Lebanon Quilt Show, which is in Pennsylvania. It's in the Amish country. So those of you that are mid-Atlantic, East Coast, if you can make it there, find her. She's got great stuff. And so I did splurge, and I had a little bit of birthday money from my family. So I got from her, first of all, this quilt behind me, or quilt top. It's just a top. You guys saw this wrapped around my neck and kind of held up at the last stream. But you can see it is amazing. It is a double wedding ring, but it's a really chunky one. Like these, I can't remember what the eye shape is called, but it is usually smaller than this. And, I have seen like really, really tiny ones on like doll quilts. I'm actually working on one myself that it's just been a project forever, that are about this big. And I have been English paper piecing mine because, this is it's a challenging curve. It's not impossible. It's one of those things, like with practice, you can get these to be really, perfect. But this is kind of an intermediate expert quilt pattern if you make it from scratch without modern conveniences. So the maker just did such a beautiful job of this, and I was very enamored of it. So that was my first purchase, or my second purchase, I'm sorry. My first purchase from her was the flour sack doll. So you can see this is what these little flour sack dolls were like. They came printed on the back of the flour sack. Interestingly enough, this originally came from an area in North Carolina that is not far from where my dad lives and where my grandparents were originally from. So I kind of had like that sort of, connection with it. It wasn't a deal breaker either way, but it was just, it's always fun to find something that's kind of like from where you have roots. It feels interesting and like you have this special connection to it. So anyway, it will never be cut, but this is what was available. You can see the front of the doll, and then there's the back of the doll, and then you'd add the arms and legs in separately, and then she had this little pinafore. So this is, again, 1930s, that they were making these, 1940s. I have a couple of books about these kind of things, like feed sacks, and I'd have to look for the exact dates of when the companies were doing these things. But safe to say, it started during the Depression and went on until the 50s or 60s, I think, with feed sacks. And then they moved on to things like paper sacks and stuff like that. They weren't making they weren't doing this nice cotton stuff anymore. But for a hot minute, they were making these things, and they were, again, mass produced. So it's a little bit more like, if you're going to collect stuff, it's a little bit more affordable to get into these kinds of things than it is to get into the 19th century and the even earlier than that stuff that, that's very few and far between that it's in good shape. And if you do want to collect that stuff, you're going to pay a pretty penny. Like the chintz stuff. Chintz, oh my Lord. Everybody's into the chintz. I'm not a huge fan of chintz and toile myself, but so chintz, of course, are the floral things. They are important because those fabrics were used in the late 1700s, early 1800s on coverlets, and basically they used the chintz to cut out the flowers. And so they could take a small piece of fabric, of chintz fabric, fussy cut all these flowers out and applique them onto a big white background, and then they'd have this beautiful coverlet. And this was a time when fabrics were hard to get, or you had to basically like weave your own here in the colonies, in the United States. So that kind of stuff is very collectible, very sought after, and very expensive. But if you love the 1930s like I do, I mean, I just have such a like, spot in my heart for this stuff. These kind of collectible things are a little bit more affordable. So just a little tip there. Something else I got from Cindy Claycamp were two feet sacks. And this one I just thought was so adorable. It's got, this little housewife or, little farm wife doing all these chores. Very cute. And then this is a cheater fabric. I love the idea of cheaters. It's just, this is a pretty common cheater. You may have really seen this. Yes, you're right. Very similar to the turnip. You can see the colors I like. I like pinks and purples and blues together, and then I like these really, bright sort of rainbowy colors. So those were my big purchases as far as, straight out buying from a vendor. Now, the other two big events were the silent auction and the live auction. I will talk about the live auction in just a moment. Let's see, Saturday. What did we even do on Saturday? I seriously, like, the days start to blend together. I'm so glad I have the program to remember what we did. So, on Saturday is when they start with the paper presentations. And what the paper presentations are, so to back up a little bit, if you decide to do something presentation-wise with AQSG, you have to submit a proposal. And they're kind of levels of, I don't want to say effort necessarily, but like how done it has to be or how perfect it has to be. And those are not good words either, but let me explain. So the first kind of thing you can do is called a poster presentation. And this is something that Mary and Molly, our friend Molly, did last year at last year's seminar. And basically, it's, if you think of like a science fair, where, kids in school, they put up the poster boards and they have all the pictures and the little statistics and things, and then they have to stand there and answer questions during the science fair. That's kind of what a poster presentation is like. You literally have a big board, and these are like professionally printed, but these big boards, and you have all of this important information on it. I did not have a chance to really look very hard at the two poster presentations that were there. But this is the kind of thing where, it's kind of a poster presentation is sort of like, this is my pitch or my general organization of what I'm going to be studying. And so you probably already have some facts and statistics. And I know the one poster presentation this year, she was looking at some type of fabrics, and I'm not sure if they were maybe Japanese or maybe Chinese. I'm not entirely sure. Yes, absolutely. It's like getting your feet wet. You haven't done all the research yet. You've started collecting ideas and you know a little bit. That's what the poster presentation is. And people can come by and ask you questions. You could sort of do your little spiel, but it's not meant to be like this big, like, structured lecture. It's just people stopping by, looking at your poster and asking you questions and that kind of thing. So it's sort of like it's like the entry level presentation, and you're only expected to be there for like a half an hour. It's not super intense. I would say the hardest thing is probably getting that poster made, getting that big poster board made, because you want that to look professional. So that's kind of the entry level. The next one up is the study center, and that's what I did. And I took you guys along for the research. You have some idea of what I went through, and you will have access to it soon. I promise. I'm going to do it for you guys. I think I'm going to break it up, and I'll talk about that later. But anyway, so that the study center is like, you have done research, you've begun to put together some ideas and some, you have some like, what's the word I'm looking for? You kind of have some ideas that are very like they're finished, like you've come to a conclusion, but you do need to do more research, or it's kind of the culmination of like all of your research, and you're putting it out there. You haven't done anything formal with it yet, if that makes sense. And yeah, Word Nerd is giving this example of the veterinarians, which is something that she participated in due to a previous job. But yeah, it is almost like it's an academic and scientific approach to information. So that's a study center. And then the paper. So if you look at it from the perspective of the poster presentation and the study center, even though these are formalized in terms of you have to have a nice poster, like you're not going to scrawl this out with, crayon on a wall. It's this nice sort of formatted thing. And the study center is supposed to be, logical. Is definitely not the kind of like out there sort of stuff I present to you guys. I talk stream of consciousness. You can't do that with a study center. It has to be organized. But these are ephemeral because, I present this at a seminar, and then like, what if I realize it's not good, or I got something wrong, or I'm missing something? Like, it's kind of ephemeral. It kind of can go away. It didn't happen, right? Not really, but you know what I mean. It's sort of like it can just poof. However, the paper is something that has to be like original research. You have to have citations. It needs to be peer reviewed. I mean, this is the kind of thing when you hear peer reviewed journal papers, you often hear about them in the scientific communities, like medical stuff. They come out with, this is what causes this disease, and they write a paper about it. This is not something you do off of the hip. You are actually like committing to something. You're saying, I did this research and here's the whole story, or I did this research and here are my conclusions. And it's printed, and it is like, once it's in, that journal form, it's part of history. So it does have to be, it has to have the credibility. You know what I'm saying? And yes, Word Nerd also makes a good point. Blanket Statements is the quarterly, it's not really newsletter, but it's like a quarterly selection of articles. It's more article driven than it is paper. And so that is also another mode of getting published with AQSG, or getting to present something with AQSG, are these sort of paperlets or articles that can go in Blanket Statements. So those are all of the ways that you can get involved with this stuff. You guys have heard me talk endlessly about, it can be intimidating, but I would say that if you've got the drive and interest in something, even if you have not even taken like the first step into it, it's something that you might want to put up there as like a goal, right? So I started researching Dutton just for fun because I thought he was interesting. When I started researching Dutton, I had absolutely no plans to do really anything formal with it. But then when I found out that people were interested and that there was this, museum collection that I could access, well, then it starts to become more serious. So I would say, like, in the quilt world, if you have interests, pursue them, look into them. And if you think it's something you might want to do one day in terms of, presenting it or publishing it, don't let intimidation be something that keeps you, away from researching and looking into it. And yes, Kathy makes another really good point that AQSG will provide mentors who will guide you through the process. Even if you have, in terms of the study center, I didn't need a whole lot of guiding because I've done lots of presentations, and that it was not a hard format for me to jump into. Now, the writing piece, I also have no problem with writing, but you have to write a little bit more academically. You have to really make sure that your citations are in place. Even for Blanket Statements, you really need to be able to say, like, this is where I got this information from, and this is why I know it's accurate. So that piece of it can be a lot, but it's not rocket science. It's definitely something that you can learn, and that there are people there to help you through. So I would say, if you have any interest whatsoever, that, like, pursue it. And there are those of us that are interested in helping and being behind you, no matter what. Um, I know also some people discovered, like, I love to be on the periphery. I love to learn. I love to hear about this stuff. I have no interest in the research. And that's cool too, because those of us that are happy to do the research, excited to do the research, have the time to do the research, we need an audience. So also so exciting when you're just interested in this stuff and you want to read it and you want to be, you know, in the audience. That is so awesome too, and a great way to support, what we're doing here. So what else? So Saturday again was the paper presentations, and then that evening we had so there was a lunch buffet, and there was a talk or a presentation by Shelley Ziegert, who, if you're over on Quilt Nerd, you've heard her name as well. Mary talks to her frequently, and so she's like another one of those people, like, you've seen her name, you've read the papers, you've seen the book, you've heard about the documentary. She was responsible for a documentary piece that I think, so there's multiple people that have done these documentaries, and some of them are on PBS. I'm trying to remember. Kathy, do you remember, is it Shelley Ziegert's that's on PBS? Is it the folk streams, or am I confusing that with the stuff Laurel Horton has done? Ugh. I should write this stuff down. Yeah, the Kentucky Project. Maybe, I can't remember. It all blends together. After a while, it's like you have your head is full of all these facts. I'll remember later. If I Google it, it'll come back. So there was that. And then more paper presentations. Yes. Okay. Right. Okay. So this is Shelley Ziegert's project. Yes. And I think Mary has shown us parts of it on Quilt Nerd. I know I went and watched what was available on PBS, but on Folkstream is one of the places where you can get, like, I think you could do like a membership, and you get access to all of these different kinds of, these little documentaries and very cool stuff. And so then also on Saturday night is the live auction. So let's see, as far as what was in the middle of the day there, I'm trying to see. I spent some time with the silent auction because there was stuff I wanted. Oh, thank you, Kathy. There was stuff I wanted, and I did not get everything I wanted. I may have pitched a small tantrum. So first of all, the way that they do the silent auction is for stuff that's real good, like really good stuff, but it's probably, it doesn't rise to the level of the live auction stuff. So the live auction stuff are like the pristine quilts, the quilts that have been signed, that have like the signature of every AQSG like founding member, stuff like that. It's like these huge collections of chintz fabric, like, 200-year-old chintz fabric. That's the kind of stuff that goes in the live auction. Now, the silent auction is everything from like boxes of people's research to, ephemera, like collections of ephemera, and, quilts galore, quilt tops, quilt blocks, like it just so much cool stuff. And of course, throughout the whole thing, people could go in there and sort of look around and add a bid. And I didn't at first have any intention of really bidding on anything because, honestly, I'm not made of money. I did make these vendor purchases. And, it's one of those things, like, I don't need more stuff right now. But alas, I found stuff. The one thing I bid on, I was positive I had it, and I don't know how somebody snuck in behind me. It was a quilt top, but it was a signature quilt top, and the bid was very low, and I think I bid on it first, actually, and then somebody outbid me. We had a little bit of a bidding war, and then they snuck in at the last minute, and that's how it happens. If you've ever been to an event that has a silent auction and it's like really good stuff, you see that sort of that sort of rivalry and outbidding. So anyway, I was bummed because I was interested in the signature quilt or signature top myself, but also one of our friends over on Quilt Nerd, M Hicks, is doing a lot of signature stuff, as does Word Nerd. I know, and I wanted to, if anybody was interested in it, I wanted to get it, and if nobody was interested, of course, I would keep it for myself and try to do some research as well. So anyway, I was really bummed I wasn't able to get that. Somebody, some sniper came in and got it last minute, but I did get my bag fell. I did get something that I'm gonna have to snipery, right? I'm gonna have to split with the Quilters Hall of Fame Museum because I outbid them and I felt so bad about it. But I got these blocks. They are not actually quilt blocks, but these are screen prints from Sally Garut. She is deceased, but she is one of the founders, like kind of the founder of AQSG. And so she was actually a printmaker and not a quilter, which it's so interesting when I find the people that are part of AQSG and they have like such passion, and then I find out they're not actual quilters. They might be textile people, they might be history people, but they discover the juicy part where it all comes together, and that is with quilts. So she had done this project where, oops, I just dropped one. There's one. Where she had, and I mean, this is probably in the 80s or maybe even earlier. I don't know. I have to get a little bit more information about it. Somebody is going to send me information about it. But basically, these were old photos of her own family, and she converted them into screen print, and she screen printed them. And some of them are original, like the original, what would have been the photo print, and then others of them are the negative. So she did both. So you can see that's a person's face right there, but it's the negative version of the photo. So she was a screen printer or a printer and a printmaker, and this was a project she did. And these belong to Laurel Horton. So Laurel Horton donated these. Here's another one she did on fabric. And you can kind of see it's not quite as easy to see, but you can see the person there. And I don't know if this is Sally or if this is a family member. Like I said, need to do more research. But yeah, I snagged these at the last minute and then found out I outbid somebody that I had been talking to who works for collections at the Quilters Hall of Fame. So she said, well, we've been trying to get the whole collection of those. Sally, obviously, because she's a printmaker, she made multiple copies of these. There's tons of them that exist. And they're trying to gather like the full collection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan them all and find out, what they're interested in and split it with them. Because I think that's the right thing to do, in my opinion. I heard people say like all is fair in love and silent auctions, but I really feel like, a complete collection of these, and Sally Garut was such an important person, that, I think that a complete collection of them is important to have there. And of course, I will keep some for myself. I mean, come on. But, in the long run, I think like, why would I buy something through or win something through a silent auction and then give half of it away? Because as exciting as it is to have a thing, and especially with this provenance, the silent auction benefits AQSG. I mean, I could have just made a donation to AQSG. I happened to get these as part of that donation. So it's not quite the same to me as like going out to one of my local auctions and being the one who got the thing, because that is exciting and you're like, ha, suck it. But that's sort of not, in my opinion, the way that things should go. When you buy stuff, it should be for, a purpose. And if you can share it where it makes sense, I think is also a good thing. Just my philosophy. So that. Now, my other silent auction purchase where I had to throw a little tantrum. If you guys are familiar with this publication, American Fabrics, I had 3 copies of this. It is, it's rare in the sense that it was a industry journal. It's not like, it was not really meant for just people, the average consumer to go out there and buy this. It was specifically for the industry. And so these American fabric producers would send their stuff into this magazine, and they'd put together this journal, and then it was going out to like fashion designers, people that wanted to know like, oh, what are the upcoming fabrics? And because their intention was to let these fabrics be touched, there are fabric swatches in these books. And for me, because my other love besides the 30s is the 60s and 70s, I want these to be able to study them. I mean, look at this. Those are fabric swatches that are glued in here. At the time, we're talking 1960 or so. Let's see. This one is, yes, this is summer of 1960. The subscription for this was $12 a year. And I think it came out quarterly. So for $12, you got this, 4 copies of this. Now, fabric swatch books are really popular with people that are into textiles. So I was doing my rounds of, yeah, you guys, I hear ya. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that people who like to document things and like to study things, this is gold. So knowing what this was, I'm making my rounds in the silent auction, and I had bid on that signature top, and it had been donated by Barbara Brackman. I mean, to own something that Barbara Brackman at one point thought was important or interesting. Anyway, so I make my rounds, and I come over. They have this table with like ephemera, and there were 4 stacks of these tied up in bundles of 4. So 4 issues per bundle, and they weren't consecutive. They were, like some years in the 60s, some years in the 50s. And the ones that I personally have collected are late 60s, early 70s. So I was like, pretty cool to kind of have a range of these. Now, the person who donated them, I'm not entirely sure how they do the silent auction project. Like, I don't know if when the people donate, they say like, this is how much it might be worth, or if there's somebody who does valuation for the silent auction who says like, this is how much these are worth. We're going to put them out for this amount. Well, the opening bid on each of these bundles, now again, we're talking 4 bundles of 4 magazines. Each of the opening bids was $50. Now, I would not have bid on them at $50. I might have bought them outright. Like if I had gone to a like antique store or someplace and they were selling the whole stack for $200, I would have scrounged under my couch cushions. I would have scrounged up the money to buy all of them as a stack, because there are people, I think there's a guy on eBay who is selling a stack of them for like $750. And I've been following him for forever, hoping that one day he will go, these are never going to sell. I'm just going to sell the whole stack for 20. It's never going to happen, but I have my dreams. Or maybe I'll win the lottery and I'll say that's the first thing I'm going to buy is that guy's huge stack of American fabrics. Well, anyway, we're in Bird Nerd. Seriously, I circled back, and somebody had, one of the live auction people, and this is what they do on the last day, there's stuff that's not being bid on. And so they might change the price, the opening bid, or they may say like, okay, all the quilt tops that nobody has bid on are now going to be half price. And so they were doing things like that. Well, these stacks of magazines had no bids. Somebody had marked through the 50 and made them $10 a stack. So I'm like, I could bid on these and get them all for $40. So of course, immediately I bid. And then I go away and I came back a little while later. You have to stalk the things you love. And somebody had outbid me. And so it goes on. And this is all throughout the day. I keep getting outbid and I'm getting like, oh no, it's getting to the point where I'm going to lose these because I just can't afford it. And finally, I kid you not, last 3 minutes of this live auction or the silent auction, we're all in there and they're counting down and they're saying, get your last bids in and you're gonna have to put the pencils down. Well, I see the person who's bidding on my magazines. I see her from the back and I'm like, oh no, you don't, sister. And I run up there and as she's writing her bid, I'm like pulling out my pencil and waiting for her to finish so that I can outbid. And I'm like, sorry. Well, I realized what she had like jumped a ton and had really outbid me in a way that it was a little bit of lost hope. Very quickly, I looked at the dates. I decided which 2 bundles I wanted, and that was what I could afford. So I did outbid her on 2 bundles. I got 8 of the magazines. I'm not going to tell you how much I paid for them because it was more than I should have, but you know, that's what birthday money from my mom and stuff is for. Like, I got enough birthday money that I could spread it out and sort of subsidize and underwrite these purchases. So anyway, I didn't say anything too terribly snarky other than running up behind this person and being like, sorry, you guys. I get to the live auction and I realized who it was that outbid me on these. It was Dana Balsamo. And if you're unfamiliar with Dana Balsamo, let me write her name in here. You can Google her. She runs an auction house. She has amazing textile auctions. Often things that probably none of us could afford if we pooled all of our life savings together. But it is an amazing source of information and like pictures of things. You'll often see Mary on the Quilt Nerd show pictures of quilts and they're from auctions, and Dana's auction is one she often finds things in. So definitely Dana Balsamo, her stuff is really a fun thing to watch and look at, if just for, you know, the things she has that where you can get a little bit of history or just eye candy. I mean, it's so fun to like, I think, window shop and auction. So yeah, Dana was outbidding me. And you are absolutely right, Kenny. There are no friends in auctions, especially when you're being outbid by an actual auctioneer. So, and of course, I was a little salty because I'm like, girl, I was bidding on these because I want to study them. You know, I mean, this is part of like the things I'm interested in studying. I'm 99% sure she was bidding on them to like flip them in an auction. I don't know. But I mean, she's an auctioneer. Why wouldn't she? I mean, it's like saying like, why would somebody buy a quilt top and have no intention of quilting it? Yeah, that's a possibility. But it's probably more likely that somebody buys a quilt top to eventually quilt, right? Probably a good chance that an auctioneer is going to buy things they can resell. So it is what it is. So anyway, then of course the live auction or the silent auction ends and we all go get ready for the live auction. And this is the big final, like the finale. I mean, there's still stuff that goes on Sunday, but Saturday, like the big finale is the live auction. And so, you know, we have the big sit down dinner and they did this absolutely adorable thing where, you know, it's Kentucky. And they talk about, you know, the Race for the Roses and it's their theme. And so they had a bunch of, I think some of these people were actual attendees and I think some of them might have been some volunteers, but they had these jockey silks on and the little fake jockey hats, and they had hobby horses, and they ran the derby around the room, and it was so stinking cute. And then of course they award the one guy with the big roses that was supposed to be like the garland that they put around the winning horse. And then of course, because he had cheated and technically run through the middle, he got disqualified and then they awarded it to another horse. It was just the cutest thing. But you guys, the way they started it, they had the trumpeter from Churchill Downs, the actual guy that they had this guy open up the dinner. he came in, he was wearing his, like, it's like a red suit, like, you know, I guess it's like it's like cropped in the front and has the long tails in the back. I can't, like, is it a morning coat or not a morning coat? A morning coat, I think, is long. Anyway, you know what, you can picture this. He's just like a little jockey, basically, with a red coat and the white pants, and he has the hat on, like the black, like, it's like the helmet, but it's got a little bill, and it's, you know what I'm talking about. You guys have seen horse races, right? And then he's got this long silver, yeah, it was tails, but I can't remember when it's cut real short in the front and then the tails are in the back. I can't remember what that's called. A morning coat is like longer. Anyway, but so he played the local Kentuckian, the member who had been the volunteer that put together all the stuff. She explained that in Kentucky, you stand up when they play My Old Kentucky Home. And so he played that, and everybody stood up. And then he did the call for the race, and that was so amazing. And so on the last day, literally like Sunday, we're getting ready they're packing up and leaving. I went up to her and I was like, Vicki, I had to tell you, it was so much fun the way they opened the live auction, or the way the live auction was opened. I knew she had a lot to do with that. And I was like, the trumpeter, like, and she says, guess how much we had to pay for him? And of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute. Did you use my dues to pay for this trumpeter? They didn't. He was free. The Kentucky, like, Board of Tourism or whatever, or Louisville Board of Tourism, something that she had gone to just to get, like, the little tourism booklets and maps and things that they always put in your swag bag. She had gone to collect those things from them, and they had said, do you have any need for the trumpeter? And she was like, yes, right, Word Nerd? It was amazing. And so I said, oh my gosh, so you got the trumpeter for free because, a hunting pink, maybe, I don't know. As a person who has studied historical costuming and things like that, I should know this, but I don't know the men's part of costuming as much as I know the women's part. If you've ever seen a lawn jockey, that's a terrible thing. Those little concrete guys that hold the lantern, he was dressed like that, if that helps any. But yeah, the fact that, this tourism board, they will lend out the Churchill Downs guy, and he's more than happy to come to your your event. So if you do an event in Kentucky, you too might be able to get the Churchill Downs guy. So I thought that was just really neat. And then all the fun and games are over. And right, yes, he only has to do the race, and he probably doesn't have much else to do. And that horn, that bugle, is probably very expensive to maintain. It has to be polished. So, Ratcatcher. I don't know. I should probably reach out to Vicki and say, like, what are all these things? But anyway, so the fun and games are over. The live action starts. That auction, oh my gosh. I don't know what I was expecting necessarily. I'd heard in the past of people saying, like, I got this thing at a live auction, at the live auction. Nobody else bid on it. I got it for this great price. There was one instance of that. Everything else, I was like, they just kept, like, bidding and bidding and bidding. And I'm like, it's just so interesting to watch. And of course, again, think about it. This benefits AQSG. This isn't like some random auctioneer, auction house where, they're there to make money and get, like, yes, like a fox hunt druid. Absolutely. That is what the outfit was like. Yeah. So, I guess if somebody's going to part with $8,000 for a quilt, the money is going to benefit AQSG. So, I guess if you have that kind of funds at your disposal to drop with no problems, then you would want it to go to AQSG, and then you get this fabulous quilt in return. That's the mentality. But yeah, too rich for my blood. Now, our very own Word Nerd had a budget. She came with a budget, planning to find something fantastic. And the very last item up for bid was the quilt she wanted. And she got into a little bit of a bidding war with our dear friend Jill. But she really, really wanted it. And so she and Jill kind of like the winks and nods at each other, and Kathy prevailed. And if you have been on the Discord, the Quilt Nerd Disco, you have seen, I believe, the beautiful quilt she got. And I was so excited because, you know, there's a little bit of like the old and the new kind of going on with AQSG. There's the people that are like literally founders, and then there are those of us that are new. And I don't want to say it's like we have something to prove. You know, it's not that way, and it shouldn't be. But there is kind of that, like, you want to say, like, look, I'm not a tourist. I am here for the long haul. I'm, like, very invested in this. And a couple of, like, newbies prevailing at the live auction, it sends the message that, like, we're, those of us, you may not have heard our names before, but we are serious about this. You know, preserving, collecting, and educating about these very important fabric documents, because that's what quilts are. You know, it's, you know, these historic quilts tell us so much about a point in time or a period in time, whether it's, you know, just the fabrics that are in them or the way that they were made, or, you know, the imagery or, you know, kind of like embellishments they put on quilts. Dates, all this stuff is so important on quilts, and that's what makes them not just a snuggly bed covering or pretty thing to look at, but like literally a historical document. So yeah, Kathy's quilt, I didn't get to examine it in super detail, but I know she's gonna put some pictures, I'm sure, more pictures up. And there's a funny picture of Kathy standing so cute. She's so cute, standing in front of the quilt. Kathy's very petite, and she's standing there in front of the quilt. Very cute picture. And then there's me. I was wearing green capri pants and like this green and white striped shirt. And I'm holding up the side of the quilt, and I'm like, it's like cute petite Kathy and the Jolly Green Giant presenting her quilt. And I don't know if it's a matter of like, if it was a matter of kind of like this visual skewing or something, but I was like, I know I'm tall, but my gosh, in that green outfit. I have to be a little self-deprecating, you guys. I can't let my head get too big. But anyway, that was so exciting, and that quilt was so amazing, is amazing. Our friend Jill also got a couple of them. It really was. It was like there was so much tension, and Kathy was right beside me, and Jill was right behind me, and I'm like, and so yeah, it was such an exciting moment when they were like going once, going twice, sold. I don't remember what your number was, Kathy. They refer to you as your number. You hold up your number. So anyway, and what I also failed to mention is Dana Balsamo and Julie Silber did. That's right, your number was 69. If anybody should have number 69, I'm glad it was a quilt nerd and one of, my friends. Because that's how we roll, right? But Julie Silber and Dana Balsamo were doing the auction. And of course, Julie Silber is not an auctioneer. She just likes to have fun. So she was up there kind of doing her thing. For some of the quilts, not all of them. And then Dana would come up and do, she would auction for a minute, over some quilts, and then Julie would come and do one, and then Dana would go back. So it was a lot of kind of ups and downs. Like sometimes it slowed down because Julie is not like a professional auctioneer, and then Dana would get up there, and Dana's like la 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 la, and if you've ever been to an auction or seen one on TV, I mean, they have that like sing-songy patter, and they're like, they go so fast. And it was amazing to see Dana do that. You don't see as many women as professional auctioneers. I mean, I would say obviously more so now than it used to be, but I think auctions like that used to be the domain of men, and it's really exciting to see a woman like in that role, like just totally rocking it. So I was, and of course my mom was like, I'm just so enamored with like that auctioneer like patter, that sing song they do. So it was pretty neat, definitely. So, oh my gosh, I'm closing in on uh on 2 hours. I have talked nonstop, haven't I? So yes, we're in Bernard. You know, I told somebody said to me like, "Oh my gosh, you're so much taller than I expected," and I was like, "Yeah, I get that. I actually get that a lot. You know, I just my height does not portray itself well on camera." And I told my mom, I was like, "I think it's okay to go up to people and say, "Oh wow, you're taller than I expected." I don't know if it's cool to go up to say to somebody and say, "Wow, you are so much shorter than I expected." But I have to say, Kathy, you are a very cute and petite 4'11". And we all towered over you, but we love you. So, yeah. So that auction was like the pinnacle of the event. And then the next morning, we have, or the early part of the day, we have the last pieces. Um, there were the final paper presentations, and then there was an annual meeting, which I missed. It's hard to go to all the things. And then we had the final batch of study centers. And I think all of us, except maybe Amy, because I'm trying to remember if Amy was leaving. But I know, Kathy, you and Padma were in there. Oh, no. Poor Kathy. Okay, so I credited Kathy in my presentation because she helped me with two very important things. Because she's an incredible researcher. She is an incredible genealogist, and like I had to thank her. Did I get her last name right on my presentation? No, I did not. What a jerk I am, because I hate it when people mess my name up. And so she very kindly told me, this is how my name is spelled. And I appreciate that. Like I always want to be corrected if I get something wrong, because it's just, I mean, that's your identity, right? So, well, so you got a new one, Kathy. I'm assuming maybe you've had that one in the past, or is that a completely new one? So anyway, our final study center, again, I think it was all of us. I think Lisa and Molly and Kathy and Padma, me and Jill were all in there. And it was, this one was the Ephemera Party with Mia Clift. And let me write her name in here. I just followed her on Instagram, and I think her Instagram is like Mia Clift. And if it's not, you'll find her if you just search Mia Clift. Oops. Yeah. So look her up. If you love all of the old things, all of the ephemera, all of the pieces and parts, you would lose your mind over Mia's stuff. She bought from Dana Balsamo at another time, not at the event, but at another time, she bought this swatch book that was actually two swatch books. One of them was actually from a factory. So it was a swatch book that showed, that literally was like all of the patterns that this particular factory made. And I think it was in France. And we're talking like early 1800s. Probably, or mid 1800s. The company was founded in like 17 something, and the book is pristine, and the fabrics are all like, there's been a little bit of like color shift in the fabrics, but they're almost like perfect. You know, they're not all gnarly and moth eaten and holy. They're like in really good condition. So obviously that was like eyes popping out. And then she had this other fabric swatch book that had been homemade. Yeah. So like what Kathy's saying, so like imagine a fabric swatch like that's this big, in a book. So imagine like a scrapbook that's like 12 by 12. Imagine a fabric swatch. So like maybe 4 or 5, maybe like 5 or 6 fabric swatches per page. So something that's like 12 by 6 inches. That was what was in the factory book. So like, again, like brain exploding. But this other swatch book, I kid you not, it was probably this deep. And it was one of those things like where, way back in the olden days when there were no computers, they would put together these like ledger books or these scrapbooks or whatever. And they used something that's called Chicago screws. And I'm pretty sure that's what this one used. But essentially Chicago screws. You still buy them for scrapbooks today. It's like an aluminum, or I guess maybe at the time it might have been steel, but it's like a column, and it's threaded on the end, and you can make them any length or buy them any length. And I think some of them, it's literally like you can screw on extra little tubes, and then you feed it up through the paper and the covers of the book, and then you screw the top down. It's got like a screw on the top. And so it's essentially like this big, long, threaded tube with screws on either end. And you can make it as long or as short as necessary for the book can expand. Well, obviously, the Chicago screw situation on this was like 4 or 5 inches, because this book was enormous. And it was collected by a person. So not a company, but an actual individual or family. I don't know. I don't know if she has a whole lot of information about it. But it spans from like, Kathy, I don't know if you had a specific idea. And I feel like she said, but then again, I'm like, did I confuse that with something else she said? Because she went really fast. But I mean, it's decades and decades and decades of swatches. So like, I think probably like late 1800s all the way up through the mid 20th century. So probably 40 or 50 years worth of fabric swatches. And they were big. And I say she, we assume it was a she. It may not have been, who knows? It could have been like a tailor or dressmaker who was a man. I don't know. But anyway, so we're talking like fabric swatches that are really big. And for the most part, they were, square, rectangular. Sometimes they would have been like sort of these trapezoid shapes, because I don't know if it was just the piece of fabric she had, or she wanted to show the more complete imagery on, because there were big flowers or something. And then in places where maybe she thought, from another commercial swatch book with a person would say, some of it, that was the thing. I don't know the provenance of that giant book. But anyway, like there were places where like maybe there was like a little sliver of space on the page in between other swatches. The person like glued in a little like ribbon sample. I mean, it was just like so amazing. And of course, Mia's rule was, do not touch these scrapbooks. You cannot. Hi, Eva. I'm so glad you're here. I'm actually getting ready to wrap up, but I'm glad you made it. Good to know that, well, I didn't think you would have forgotten, but I just didn't know if you were still having issues with the internet. So the new Haunted Mansion. Are you talking about the movie? I'm guessing so. You have to let me know how it was. But anyway, so there were what she called the swatch book helpers who had gloves on and were very carefully turning the pages. There are spots where some of the swatches were coming out because the glue was starting to, or the glue long ago had gotten, non-sticky. So yeah, that just like, I could not even. And I did snap some random pictures of that stuff. So I haven't posted those yet, but I will. Either I'll probably put those on Disco as well as on my Instagram if you want to see those. And that was the end. I mean, it was so like overwhelming, as you can imagine, but so awesome. And, again, I have all this work to do now in terms of things to read and people to talk to and just like cool stuff to document, photograph, do something with. And one other thing I will leave here. So of course, my sweet little pocket Dutton that Padma gave me. I also got a present from another person who is not a quilt nerd, but I hope we told her enough that she will come over to Quilt Nerd or here, hopefully to join us and chit chat, because she definitely is like us. She's our people. She lives not far from me. Her name is Amanda, and she came to my lecture. But a little bit before my lecture, I had walked by the endowment table. And like I said, the endowment table, a little bit like the silent auction, but not really. Like you go up and you find a thing and you say, may I offer, $10 to the endowment fund for this item? And they would tell you like, yes, I will accept your offer. Well, I saw this and she went and snagged it for me. So it's not in great condition, but my best guess is that it's old curtains from a child's, like a nursery, like, child's nursery. But can you see these little people? So two things about these little people. One is that I'm 90% sure they are patterned off of a toy. And I have one of these toys. It's a little antique toy. And basically they're wooden beads that make these things. Yeah, they're a little bit like the little people toys, but they're strung together. Yes, the one I have is actually just like a cording, but they could be elastic joints. But yeah, I'll dig out the one that I have, and so next time I can show you. But yeah, so they're these beads, and they're all, and they would usually have a string at the top. And so that, I'm sure that they're patterned, like this is patterned after those little people. But there's also a quilt that Mary showed us over on Quilt Nerd. It's been a while. It's been at least 6 months, if not a year ago. But it was a quilt that's right, Kathy? I know. But it was like they had made these little people on the quilt just using circles. Like they had cut out circles of fabric, and they had applique them down like this, right? They looked like this kind of thing, and they were doing things like jumping jacks and all kinds of stuff. And it's like, maybe these little toys were not, or even this print was not, maybe it wasn't the inspiration, but I really feel like it was. So anyway, Amanda got this for me, and hopefully she, it didn't set her back a whole lot. I'm hoping, because the fabric is not in super condition, but I mean, I just love it so much. And it was so sweet of her as like a new friend to, pick this up and gift it to me. I just, like I say, I cannot go on enough about the generosity and kindness of people in this community. The Quilt Nerd community, and you guys are especially special subgroup of the Quilt Nerd community. I love you so much. You are so, just fantastic people. You're so kind. You're so generous. The AQSG people are too. And so we're all our people. We're all, we are in the midst of our people when we are with them. So yeah, definitely. So I'm going to close soon, but I have to show you my very last amazing thing. I got two things at the endowment table. And one of them, I need to find out details before I actually do anything with them, because I am going to make something with them. So I'm not going to show you those. But, oh gosh, there's some other things I got I didn't talk about. I'll talk about these other items. Mostly paper things I'll talk about next time. But there was this Sunbonnet Sue quilt top, and it was hanging there, and so there's the people that love Sunbonnet Sue, like me. My personal connection to Sunbonnet Sue is mostly because my grandmother made a Sunbonnet Sue quilt for my mother when I was little, and I immediately took it. I was probably 3 or 4. And my mom we had moved into a new house when I was 4, and my mom was decorating. And I think it just made sense that I had this super pink girly bedroom. And so my mom put the quilt on my bed, and it was forever after that my quilt. I still have it, of course. It is one of my most prized possessions. If the house is on fire and, the important documents are in the fire safe and my family and the pets are safe, that quilt is the first thing I grab. So it's important. A lot of people do not like Sunbonnet Sue. If you are a longtime quilt nerd, you've seen the quilt in the quilt blocks where they did mean things to Sue. That was in the 70s. And it was just this I would say there were a lot of women that were moving on to more sophisticated, yeah, I saved the family first, right? They're moving on to, in the 70s and 80s, they're moving on to more sophisticated things with this, the second wave quilt revival, and the Sunbonnet Sues were kind of considered like, they were applique. A lot of times they were, they're very simplistic. A lot of people made them. They were looked upon as just like, they were nothing impressive, and people came to hate them. But I, on the other hand, love them. And I've been collecting for a very long time, mostly tops, although I now have a few actual quilts aside from my legacy quilt. My mom actually bought me one recently that she got on a like Facebook. Oh my goodness, your Aunt Gloria. Oh, that is so sweet, Kenny. But I think my mom got me one recently on the Facebook Marketplace. She got me one. And so anyway, this Sue, I'm 90% certain nobody was going to pick up this Sue unless it was the very end and they felt sorry for her or them. We've decided these might be, we don't know what they are. But this is what all the Sues look like. I'm not doing a very good job of holding these up. I'll put them behind me next time on my next stream. But this is what the Sues look like. She's got no arms. And she's not even really wearing a dress. So I don't know that we can call her a she. It's a weeble. I called them jelly beans because they kind of look like a jelly bean. We also coined the name Potato Sue. Toddler Sue. Yeah, potatoes. And that's what I think. I think that was the intention, to make it look like a little, something like that. Schmooze. Yes, somebody else said the schmooze, which I vaguely know. But, of course, the woman who mentioned it is like, you're too young. I got that a lot. Like, young face, old body. But, yes, absolutely. And I believe we're the schmooze blue. Maybe. Okay. So yeah. And so I offered a few bucks to the endowment, and they gladly accepted it because this Sue was not in like super demand. Oh, wait. Okay. They remind me of the Moomins, and I feel like the Schmooze and the Moomins are a little bit similar, and they're like kind of an amorphous sort of animal. The Moomins are Swedish, I think. Anyway, so we've got Weeble Sue. They were also calling them Weebles, so Weeble Sue. That was my big Sue item, my big final item, and I knew that you guys would appreciate it. Mary says that they're transit Sues. We don't know if it's a he or a she. It's amorphous, and that I should, do something along that vein with it. I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. The lack of arms is obviously something that either I need to add arms or do something considering the lack of arms. I'm not sure. But at this point I have a number of Sues now, and I kind of want to do a little bit of a study thing on Sues. Like maybe like do a survey. Do you love Sue? Check 1. Yes. No. Yes, but I wouldn't admit it. I know that Robin, our friend Robin, she loves Sues. But yeah, she's either loved or hated. So I feel strongly about her. So I'm going to leave it there for now. I've done 2 hours and 15 minutes almost. I could talk more and more and more and more. There was drama. There was one bit of drama. I will, if you guys remind me, I will describe it next time, because it's one of those things where I'm like, wow, yes, can you believe it? There is drama in the quilt study world. Their personalities get a little clashy. People do real dumb things. Yeah, there was the near abuse of a quilt happened, and I'll leave it there, and I'll tell you about it next time, because it is something that I think all of you, as even you guys that are fairly new to the quilting game, will recognize it as what this person did as being like, you guys would totally get it. I mean, like it, yes, I will leave it as a cliffhanger because seriously, you don't even have to make quilts necessarily to understand what this person did was like, how absolute dare. It did happen to me, thank goodness. It happened to a person I talked to, and there was photographic evidence. So, yeah, don't let me forget next time, you guys, when I stream again. So, now here's the thing with the next stream. Monday is going to be a problem. Kathy, you might have. It came up in it happened to Mia Clift. And she and Jill were talking about it in her study center. And then I kind of got I was eavesdropping and got the details. So Monday's a problem because unfortunately I have a client obligation. And I really tried to maneuver it so that it was either before or after the stream. They want this time slot. So 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. my time. So I'm going to have to move things. The other problem with next week is Thursday. I am going on a trip up to Pennsylvania to see Barb Garrett, who is a quilt collector, another person to know in the world of AQSG. So here's what I'm going to do. I don't want to double up on Tuesday for Quilt Nerd. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stream on Wednesday next week. And I will change my schedule to reflect this, but please share amongst yourselves. I will mention this on Saturday during Quilt Nerd, or not Saturday, I'm sorry, Tuesday on Quilt Nerd when we're back. But just keep this in mind. Next week, I will stream one day, and it's going to be Wednesday, okay? Regular time, 2 p.m. I don't like to move times because it's so confusing for me. One time is always good. So 2 p.m. Eastern time, next Wednesday. Let me look at the date to make sure I tell you guys the right date. Next Wednesday is the 11th. So for that week only, October 11th, 2 to 4, I will stream. And then after that, we'll, fingers crossed, be back to normal. I'll do Mondays and Thursdays back to normal. So I think that's it, you guys. Oh no! It's okay, Spitzka, because Druid's here. And worst case, Word and Bird Nerd is also a friend who knows how to moderate a little bit. So, yeah, Eva, you'll have to watch the replay. I'm sorry. So yeah. Okay. Awesome. So yes, have a good afternoon, you guys. I have a wonderful weekend. Obviously, it is Friday Eve. Quilt Nerd is still in the dark week right now through Saturday, but we'll be back next Tuesday, and I believe it is a Quilt Nerd on Parade. So if you have not submitted something and you want to, be sure you get that in. I think Robin has probably created a cutoff. Yes, also, can you throw a shout out in there for Kenny? Eva, I don't know if you can on your phone, on Spitzka's phone, but yeah, somebody can do a shout out for Kenny, because Kenny does stream on Sundays, and he streams really good quilting tips, actual making of quilts. So if you want to see that, you definitely want to see that. So yeah, I'll see you guys on Saturday if I make it to Kenny's. Okay, so if you can't do it, let me do it real quick, because Kenny is a superstar and a supporter of this show. I don't want to leave him hanging. So shout out. And Kenny. Yeah, I did it right. Oh, thanks so much, Akamo. Yeah, you guys have a super awesome weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday and or Saturday or Sunday if I can make it to Kenny's stream, but definitely on Tuesday when we will do the Quilt Nerd on Parade. I'm not gonna raid today, you guys, because I got some stuff I need to finish something here in the software. So yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Mwah, mwah, mwah! And pretty soon I will have a goodbye slide. That's on my list. But beyond that, love you guys a bunch, and have a great afternoon.